The Great Dismal Swamp lies on the border of Virginia and North Carolina, a vast, dark, impenetrable wilderness that covers more than 100,000 acres. It is a place of black water and ancient cypress trees, of Spanish moss that hangs from the branches like the shrouds of the dead, of mist that rises from the water and does not lift, of mud that shifts beneath your feet and swallows those who do not know its ways. It is a place that the English settlers avoided, that the surveyors could not map, that the soldiers feared to enter. It is a place that has its own laws, its own rhythms, its own inhabitants. And in the 1770s, it was the home of a woman they called the Black Queen. She was a legend before she was a person. The British soldiers who patrolled the edges of the swamp spoke of her in whispers. They said she was an escaped enslaved woman who had fled into the swamp decades before, who had found a way to survive in the shifting mud and the stagnant water, who had gathered others to her, who had built a community in the heart of the wilderness. They said she was immortal. They said she had been born in the swamp, that she had been raised by the spirits of the water and the trees, that she could walk on the mud without sinking, that she could see in the darkness, that she could call the fog to hide her people and the fever to take her enemies. They said that she had been hunted for 30 years, that soldiers had gone into the swamp after her and never returned, that the swamp itself protected her, that she was not a woman but something else, something that the land had made, something that could not die. The Black Queen was real. Her name is lost. The records of the plantations where she was enslaved do not mention her. The journals of the soldiers who hunted her do not name her. The legends that were passed down through the generations call her only the Black Queen, or the Queen of the Swamp, or the woman who could not die. But she was real. She was a woman who escaped from slavery, who fled into the Great Dismal Swamp, who found a way to survive in a place that was designed to kill anyone who entered it. She gathered others to her, men and women who had escaped from the plantations of the Tidewater, who had been abandoned by the armies that had promised them freedom, who had nowhere else to go. She built a community on the islands of solid ground that rose out of the black water, on the patches of high ground that were hidden from the eyes of those who did not know the swamp. She ruled that community for decades, and she was never caught. The Great Dismal Swamp is a landscape that is designed to resist human habitation. The water is black with tannins from the cypress trees, stained like tea, acidic, undrinkable. The mud is deep, shifting, treacherous, a quicksand that can swallow a man to his waist in seconds. The mosquitoes rise from the water in clouds, carrying fevers that can kill in days. The snakes coil in the branches of the trees, the bears move through the undergrowth, the panthers watch from the shadows. The fog rolls in at dusk and does not lift until noon, turning the world into a gray, featureless void where direction is impossible, where the path you were following disappears behind you, where the path ahead is the same as the path behind. It is a place that has no roads, no trails, no maps. It is a place that does not want you to be there, and yet the Maroons lived there. They learned the swamp. They learned which islands were solid enough to build on, which trees would hold a shelter, which plants were edible, which roots could heal. They learned to navigate by the patterns of the water, by the direction of the wind, by the calls of the birds. They learned to move through the swamp without leaving tracks, to hide their shelters among the cypress knees, to build their fires in pits that would not be seen from a distance. They learned to use the swamp itself as a weapon, to lead their pursuers into the mud that would swallow them, to guide them into the patches of poison water, to leave them in the fog that would never lift. They learned that the swamp was not their enemy. The swamp was their home. The swamp was their ally. The swamp was their kingdom. The Black Queen was not the first to escape into the Dismal Swamp. Enslaved people had been fleeing into the wilderness since the first plantations were established on the Tidewater. The swamp was a place of refuge, a place where a person could disappear, a place where the hunters would not follow. But she was the one who turned the swamp from a refuge into a nation. She was the one who gathered the scattered fugitives, who organized them into a community, who gave them laws and a leader. She was the one who made the Maroons of the Dismal Swamp into a force that the planters feared and the soldiers could not defeat. The legends say that she was brought to the swamp as a child. They say that she was taken from her mother, from her village, from the land where her people had lived for generations. They say that she was sold, transported, sold again, and brought to a plantation on the edge of the Great Dismal Swamp. They say that she was put to work in the fields, that she was beaten, that she was broken, that she was left for dead. And then they say that she rose. They say that she rose from the mud where she had been left, that she walked into the swamp, that she did not look back. They say that the swamp received her, that the water parted for her, that the trees bent their branches to shelter her, that the animals came to her and did not fear her. They say that she found an island in the heart of the swamp, a place where the ground was solid and the water was clean, and that she built a shelter there. They say that she waited. She waited for others who would come, for the men and women who would flee from the plantations, for the children who would be abandoned, for the soldiers who would be sent to hunt her. She waited and she prepared and she became the queen. The first time the British soldiers went into the swamp after her, they were confident. They had guns, they had maps, they had orders to find the Maroons and destroy their settlement. They marched into the swamp at dawn, in formation, with drums and flags, the way they had marched into battlefields across the world. They did not know that the swamp was not a battlefield. They did not know that the mud would not hold them. They did not know that the fog would blind them. They did not know that the eyes were watching them from the darkness, eyes that never blinked. The soldiers marched for a day. They marched through water that rose to their knees, through mud that sucked at their boots, through fog that turned the world into a gray void. They lost their direction. They lost their formation. They lost their confidence. And then they began to lose their men. One soldier stepped off the path and was swallowed by the mud before his comrades could reach him. Another drank from the black water and was dead by nightfall. A third disappeared into the fog and was never seen again. The soldiers huddled together on a patch of solid ground, listening to the sounds of the swamp, the croaking of frogs, the buzzing of mosquitoes, the rustling of something moving in the darkness. And they watched the eyes that glowed in the fog, the eyes that watched them from the trees, the eyes that did not blink. They never found the Maroons. They never found the Black Queen. They retreated from the swamp after 3 days, with half their number dead or missing. They did not go back. The other soldiers who were sent to hunt the Maroons heard the stories. They heard about the mud that swallowed men, about the fog that blinded them, about the eyes that watched from the darkness. They heard about the Black Queen, who the swamp protected, who could not be killed, who was immortal. They went into the swamp with fear in their hearts, and they came out with nothing but stories. The Maroon community that the Black Queen built was not a village in the way that the plantations were villages. It was a network of hidden camps, scattered across the islands of the swamp, connected by paths that only the Maroons knew. There were shelters made of cypress bark and palmetto fronds, raised on platforms above the mud, hidden among the trees. There were gardens where they grew corn and beans and squash, hidden in clearings that were invisible from the water. There were smokehouses where they smoked the fish they caught and the game they hunted, the smoke rising in thin wisps that disappeared into the fog. There were communal fires where they gathered at night, where they told the stories of the plantations they had escaped, of the families they had left behind, of the lives they were building in the swamp. And there was the Black Queen's Lodge, the largest of the shelters, the place where she held court, where she heard the disputes of her people, where she gave her judgments, where she planned the defense of the kingdom. She was not a queen in the way that the Europeans used the word. She did not wear a crown. She did not sit on a throne. She did not command armies. She was a queen because she had survived. She was a queen because she had led her people into the swamp and kept them alive. She was a queen because the swamp had chosen her, because the land had recognized her, because the spirits of the water and the trees had made her their voice. She was a queen because the people who followed her believed that she was immortal, that she could not die, that she would lead them until the day when the swamp finally released her. The British soldiers were not the only ones who hunted the Black Queen. The American colonists, after they had won their independence, continued the hunt. The planters of Virginia and North Carolina saw the Maroons of the Dismal Swamp as a threat, a symbol of resistance, a promise that escape was possible, that freedom could be found. They offered rewards for the capture of the Black Queen. They sent hunters into the swamp, men who knew the wilderness, who had tracked bears and panthers, who were paid for every Maroon they brought back. The hunters went into the swamp. Some of them came back, some of them did not. Those who came back spoke of the mud that shifted beneath their feet, of the fog that rose without warning, of the eyes that watched them from the darkness. They spoke of a woman who appeared on the path ahead of them, a woman in a dress of Spanish moss and palmetto leaves, a woman whose eyes glowed in the fog, a woman who spoke to them in a voice that was not a voice, that was the sound of the wind in the cypress trees, that was the sound of the water moving in the dark. She told them to turn back. She told them to leave the swamp. She told them that the swamp was hers, that she had been there before they were born, that she would be there after they were dead. Some of them turned back, some of them did not. The ones who did not were never seen again. The legends of the Black Queen grew with each year that she evaded capture. The soldiers and the hunters told stories of her powers. They said she could walk on the water. They said she could call the fog to hide her people. They said she could command the animals of the swamp, that the bears and the panthers were her servants, that the snakes and the alligators did her bidding. They said she could make herself invisible, that she could disappear into the mist, that she could become a part of the swamp itself. They said she was not a woman. They said she was a spirit. They said she was the swamp made flesh, the soul of the wilderness, the guardian of the place that the Europeans could not conquer. The Maroons who lived with her told different stories. They told stories of a woman who was wise, who was patient, who was fair. They told stories of a woman who knew the swamp as no one else knew it, who could find the solid ground in the shifting mud, who could read the patterns of the water, who could follow the calls of the birds to the places where the fish were running. They told stories of a woman who healed the sick with the plants of the swamp, who knew which roots would bring down fever, which leaves would close a wound, which bark would ease the pain of childbirth. They told stories of a woman who taught them to survive, who showed them how to build their shelters, how to hide their fires, how to move through the swamp without leaving tracks. They told stories of a woman who gave them laws, who settled their disputes, who kept them from turning on each other. They told stories of a woman who was not a spirit, who was not immortal, who was a woman like them, a woman who had escaped from slavery, a woman who had built a life in the swamp. But they told the stories in whispers, because they knew that the legend of the Black Queen was a weapon. They knew that if the soldiers believed she was immortal, if they believed she could not be killed, they would be afraid. They would hesitate. They would turn back, and the Maroons would survive. The Great Dismal Swamp is a place of bioluminescence. In the darkness, in the places where the water is still and the trees are ancient, there are fungi that glow with a pale blue-green light. They grow on the trunks of the cypress trees, on the fallen logs, on the roots that reach into the water. They light the paths that the Maroons walk, the paths that the soldiers cannot see. They mark the places where the ground is solid, where the water is safe to drink, where the fish are abundant. They are the lights of the swamp, the lanterns that the Black Queen hung in the darkness, the signs that she left for her people. The soldiers who saw them did not know what they were. They thought they were spirits. They thought they were the eyes of the Queen, watching them from the trees. They thought they were the souls of the dead, the ones who had been swallowed by the mud, the ones who had never left the swamp. The bioluminescence of the Dismal Swamp is real. It is a natural phenomenon, the light of fungi that feed on the decaying wood of the cypress trees. But to the soldiers who entered the swamp, it was not natural. It was magic. It was the Queen's magic. It was the sign that they were in her kingdom, that she was watching, that she would decide whether they would live or die. They saw the lights in the darkness and they were afraid. They turned back if they could. They ran if they could. They prayed if they could remember the words. And some of them did not turn back. Some of them walked into the lights, walked into the darkness, walked into the swamp, and were never seen again. The Black Queen's reign lasted for more than 30 years. She led her people through wars and revolutions, through the years when the British ruled, and the years when the Americans took their place, through the years when the planters offered rewards for her head, and the years when they pretended she did not exist. She watched the world change from the safety of the swamp. She watched the ships that carried soldiers and supplies, the armies that marched along the roads, the plantations that grew and shrank and grew again. She watched and she waited, and she kept her people alive. In the 1780s, after the American Revolution, there was a new nation, a nation that had been founded on the principles of liberty and freedom, a nation that still held people in chains. The planters of Virginia and North Carolina looked at the Dismal Swamp and saw a threat. They saw a community of free Black people, living outside the law, living in a place that they could not control. They saw a symbol of resistance, a promise that escape was possible, a challenge to the system that their wealth depended on. They sent hunters into the swamp. They offered rewards. They threatened to drain the swamp, to cut down the trees, to fill the water, to make the land safe for settlement. But the swamp was too vast, too wild, too dangerous. They could not drain it. They could not fill it. They could not conquer it, and the Black Queen remained. The last time the British soldiers went into the Dismal Swamp was in the autumn of 1781, during the final campaign of the American Revolution. A regiment of British soldiers, retreating from the American forces, was ordered to march through the swamp, to find the Maroon community, to destroy it, to take the Black Queen if they could. They entered the swamp in the morning, with a guide who had lived on the edge of the swamp his whole life, a man who said he knew the paths, who said he could lead them to the Queen. They marched for a day. They marched through water that rose to their waists, through mud that sucked at their horses, through fog that turned the world into a gray void. The guide led them deeper into the swamp, past the cypress trees with their hanging moss, past the black water that reflected nothing, past the patches of bioluminescent fungi that glowed in the darkness. And then the guide disappeared. He stepped off the path into the mud, into the fog, and he was gone. The soldiers called for him. They searched for him. They could not find him. They were alone in the swamp. They marched on. They did not know where they were going. They did not know how to get back. They marched until the sun set, until the fog thickened, until the bioluminescent fungi began to glow in the darkness. They saw the lights. They saw the eyes. They saw the shapes moving in the shadows. They heard the sounds, the rustling, the splashing, the whispers that were not words, that were the sound of the wind in the trees, that were the sound of the water moving in the dark. And then they saw her. She was standing on the path ahead of them, a woman in a dress of Spanish moss and palmetto leaves, her face lit by the bioluminescent glow, her eyes burning in the darkness. She did not speak. She did not move. She stood there watching them, waiting. The soldiers raised their guns. They fired. The woman did not fall. She stood there watching them, waiting. The soldiers ran. They ran into the darkness, into the fog, into the swamp. Some of them made it out. Some of them did not. The ones who made it out told the story. They told of the woman who could not be killed, the woman whose eyes burned in the darkness, the woman who was the swamp itself. They told of the Black Queen, and they never went back. The legends say that the Black Queen died in the winter of 1801. They say that she was old, that her hair was gray, that her skin was wrinkled, that she had lived for more than 100 years. They say that she called her people to her lodge, that she spoke to them one last time, that she told them to remember her, to remember the swamp, to remember that they were free. And then she walked into the swamp, into the water, into the fog, and she did not come back. They say that the swamp took her, that it welcomed her, that it made her part of itself. They say that her spirit is still there, in the cypress trees, in the black water, in the bioluminescent fungi that light the darkness. They say that she is watching, that she is waiting, that she will never leave. They say that she is immortal. The Maroon community of the Dismal Swamp did not die with the Black Queen. The descendants of the people she led stayed in the swamp for generations, through the years when the planters offered rewards for their capture, through the years when the swamp was surveyed and logged and drained, through the years when the nation that had been founded on liberty and freedom fought a war to end slavery. They stayed in the swamp until the Civil War, until the Union soldiers came, until the Emancipation Proclamation, until the last of the plantations were burned. And then they came out. They came out of the swamp into the world, into a world that was new, a world that was not the world they had left. They brought with them the stories of the Black Queen, the legends of the woman who had led them, the woman who had kept them alive, the woman who was immortal. The Great Dismal Swamp is still there. It is a national wildlife refuge now, a protected place, a place where the cypress trees still grow, where the black water still flows, where the Spanish moss still hangs from the branches. The bioluminescent fungi still glow in the darkness. The fog still rises from the water at dusk and does not lift until noon. The mud still shifts beneath the feet of those who do not know its ways, and the eyes are still watching. The eyes that glow in the fog, the eyes that watch from the trees, the eyes that do not blink. They are the eyes of the Black Queen. They are the eyes of the swamp. They are the eyes of the place that has always been there, that will always be there, that will never be conquered. The soldiers who hunted her are gone. The planters who offered rewards for her head are gone. The nation that enslaved her people has been transformed, again and again, through war and peace, through struggle and triumph. But the Black Queen remains. She is in the cypress trees, in the black water, in the bioluminescent fungi that light the darkness. She is in the fog that rises from the swamp, in the mud that swallows those who do not know its ways, in the eyes that watch from the shadows. She is the spirit of the place, the guardian of the wilderness, the soul of the Dismal Swamp. She was called immortal, and perhaps she was, perhaps she is. The Maroons of the Dismal Swamp are a footnote in history. The books that tell the story of the American Revolution, of the early republic, of the expansion of the nation into the Western territories, do not mention them. The historians who write of the great events of the 18th century, of the battles and the treaties and the constitutions, do not include them. But they were there in the swamp, in the darkness, in the fog. They were there, building a world in the most inhospitable landscape in America. They were there, surviving, resisting, waiting. And they were there, led by a woman who the soldiers believed was immortal, a woman who they could not kill, a woman who they could not capture, a woman who they could not even find. The Black Queen is not a legend. She is a woman whose name is lost, whose face is forgotten, whose story has been passed down through the generations in whispers. She is a woman who escaped from slavery, who fled into the swamp, who built a community, who led her people for more than 30 years, who was never caught. She is a woman who the British soldiers believed was immortal, because they could not understand how she had survived, how she had evaded them, how she had kept her people alive in a place that was designed to kill. She is a woman who became a legend because the legend was a weapon. The legend made the soldiers afraid. The legend made them hesitate. The legend made them turn back. And the legend kept her people alive. The Great Dismal Swamp is a place of survival. It is a place where the water is black and the mud is deep, where the mosquitoes carry fevers and the snakes coil in the branches, where the fog rises at dusk and does not lift until noon. It is a place that does not want you to be there, but the Maroons survived there. They learned the swamp. They made it their home. They turned it from a place of death into a place of life. And they did it because they had a leader who knew the swamp, who understood it, who was part of it. They did it because they had the Black Queen. The bioluminescent fungi still glow in the darkness. The The Spanish moss still hangs from the cypress trees, the fog still rises from the water at dusk, and the eyes are still watching. The eyes that glow in the fog, the eyes that watch from the trees, the eyes that do not blink. They are the eyes of the Black Queen. They are the eyes of the swamp. They are the eyes of the place that has always been there, that will always be there, that will never be conquered. If you go to the Great Dismal Swamp today, you will find a national wildlife refuge. There are boardwalks that lead into the swamp, paths that allow you to walk without sinking into the mud. There are signs that tell you about the plants and the animals, about the history of the place, about the logging and the draining that nearly destroyed it. There are visitors who come to see the cypress trees, the black water, the Spanish moss. But if you go off the boardwalk, if you step into the swamp, if you walk into the darkness, you will find something that the signs do not tell you about. You will find the mud that shifts beneath your feet. You will find the fog that rises without warning. You will find the bioluminescent fungi that glow in the darkness. And you will find the eyes that watch you from the trees. The eyes that do not blink. They are the eyes of the Black Queen. They are the eyes of the swamp, and they are watching you. The legends say that she never died. They say that the swamp took her, that it welcomed her, that it made her part of itself. They say that she is still there, in the cypress trees, in the black water, in the bioluminescent fungi that light the darkness. They say that she is watching, that she is waiting, that she will never leave. They say that she is immortal. The Black Queen of the Dismal Swamp is a story about survival. It is a story about a woman who escaped from slavery, who built a community in the heart of a wilderness, who led her people for more than 30 years, who was never caught. It is a story about the power of the land, about the ways that the oppressed can make the wilderness their home, about the ways that the hunted can become the hunters. It is a story about the legends that we create, the stories that we tell, the myths that keep us alive. And it is a story about the eyes that watch from the darkness, the eyes that do not blink, the eyes that are still watching, waiting for the next person who comes into the swamp, who walks off the boardwalk, who steps into the mud, who looks into the fog, who sees the bioluminescent glow and wonders what it is, who sees the eyes and wonders who is watching. The Black Queen is waiting. She has been waiting for more than 200 years. She is waiting for the next person who will come into the swamp, who will hear her story, who will believe it. She is waiting for the next person who will see the eyes in the darkness, who will feel the mud shifting beneath their feet, who will walk into the fog and not look back. She is waiting for the next person who will understand that the swamp is not a place to be conquered, that it is a place to be respected, that it is a place that has its own laws, its own rhythms, its own inhabitants. She is waiting for the next person who will see her, who will know her, who will remember her. She is waiting, and she is watching, and she will never leave. The Great Dismal Swamp is a place of darkness and light, of water and mud, of life and death. It is a place that has been a refuge for the hunted, a home for the displaced, a kingdom for a woman who the soldiers believed was immortal. It is a place that holds the stories of those who came before, the stories that are written in the cypress trees, in the black water, in the bioluminescent fungi that glow in the darkness. It is a place that is still watching, still waiting, still holding its secrets. And somewhere in the deepest part of the swamp, on an island that no map shows, in a shelter that no surveyor has found, the Black Queen is waiting. She is waiting for the next person who will come into the swamp, who will hear her story, who will believe it. She is waiting for the next person who will see her eyes in the darkness, who will feel her presence in the fog, who will know that she is there. She is waiting and she is watching, and she is immortal. The swamp is still there, the cypress trees still grow, the black water still flows, the Spanish moss still hangs from the branches, the fog still rises at dusk. The bioluminescent fungi still glow in the darkness, and the eyes are still watching, the eyes that glow in the fog, the eyes that watch from the trees, the eyes that do not blink. They are the eyes of the Black Queen, they are the eyes of the swamp. They are the eyes of the place that has always been there, that will always be there, that will never be conquered. The Black Queen is waiting. Are you ready to see her? If you're enjoying this journey, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us uncover more hidden secrets, haunted stories, and thrilling tales just like this one. Don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe now and turn on notifications.